Defects, welcome to the first Butcher's Block. So first off, Defects, I want to give a huge shout out to Ronnie McFadden because he hit us up on Instagram and said this topic on Taika Waititi and his interview with the Smartlist podcast about him and his interaction with Marvel has to be on a Butcher's Block, where basically we take a subject, whether it be movies, comic book, or community, and throw it right on that block and talk about it. So in this instance, it's Waititi talking about his hiring process with Marvel Studios, Thor Ragnarok, which was a great movie, and he did a knockout job then, and then the total opposite, his destruction of Thor and Gore in Thor Love and Thunder. Listen, the guy's a great director, right? He has a great cult following. Some of his movies, though, don't fit what he tried to do in Love and Thunder. Matt, we said it from the beginning. We don't think this is going to work with Gore the God Butcher. It's too dark of a movie, too dark of a character. His family being killed, his wife and kid from the gods not helping him out. And then Taika took it over, and we all seen what happened from there, Matt. So you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Thor Ragnarok is a lot of people's top MCU movie. It's not mine. I do like it. It's definitely in my top 10. Might be in my top 5. I know a lot of people. It's in their top 3 or top 1, and he did a great job with it. I think he kind of took a franchise that not a ton of people cared about and made a lot of people care about it, and that was great. And what he did with Thor: Love and Thunder, though, it just didn't fit, like Jay just said, unfortunately. And it took what he did with Ragnarok and he amplified it, and it was too much. It was over the top. And to be honest with you, even if you like the silly stuff, I just don't think it was a great movie anyway. Like even if it was like even with the silly stuff, if it was good, you could have said, well, it was a good movie. It's just not what I wanted. But like Jay said, that storyline needed to be a lot darker than it was. And if anything, it was even sillier, and they tried to be sillier than they were in Ragnarok. So not great. And we're gonna get into some of the comments here, and we're gonna give our honest opinion about it and kind of touch on maybe some of this is what's happening in the MCU in the last 2 phases, which is why they're doing a complete reversal right now and trying to save their ass. To be honest with you.
Yeah. So I thought for a good segment for this is we take some of his key quotes that he had in this interview with Smartless Podcast. We talk about the comment and then we break that down a little bit and then go from there and then just give our final thoughts. So, what Taika first said is he had absolutely no interest in ever directing a Marvel movie. Then took Ragnarok because he just had a second kid, was poor, and it was a great opportunity to feed his kids. So, I mean, that being said, good for him, right? But if you're up and coming, because that was pretty much his breakout movie, right? That Marvel really paid him a lot of money to do was Ragnarok. Do you take a movie just because you need to get paid? Is that the direction you want to go in? And it was a success, but then look what happens afterwards. Matt, how do you feel about that comment? And I mean, Marvel's throwing money at this guy. How do you say no, right?
Right. I'm not mad at that portion of the interview because, you got to do what's right for you and your family. And I think, and it was successful, right? And I said it before, like, he didn't really have anything to lose because, you know, Thor 1 and Thor 2 is not really well received. And it was a character that not a ton of people outside of comics, right? And I'm going to say that. Not a ton of people outside of comics cared a lot for. Okay. And I'm not
Right.
saying that
Yep.
it was probably the least popular Avenger, or he was towards the bottom of the barrel. His movies did okay. They were both okay. He just said we need to try to take a different direction, and I think Marvel probably said the same thing, and it was successful, right? They changed the course of what Thor was in the MCU, and it worked. So I don't mind that he did it for that reason, and clearly he put a lot of effort into Ragnarok because you can't just pretend, you can't just fake your way into making a great movie because that's what it was. It
Yep.
was a great movie, regardless of whether you liked the tone of it or not. It was well developed, it was well written, and it was well executed. So he did a good job, and he did it for an admirable reason. You know, I don't need every director to be a comic fan. I just need them to take into account what they're making. And he definitely went against the grain of what Thor is in the comics. But it did work in this case. All right. But Thor Love and Thunder, not so much, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, and you touched on it already. He said in the interview, Thor, let's face it, it was the most least popular franchise that Marvel has done. And you just touched on that. And what else you touched on was pretty much the background of someone not being into comics making a comic book movie. And here's where he said to that. I never read Thor comics as a kid. That was one comic I used to pick up and just say, ugh. I did some research on it and I read one Thor comic or at least 18 pages of it or however long it was. I was still baffled by this character. To me, and like, listen, let's get one thing out of the way first. This interview came out before he was pretty much kibosh for Thor 5, right? They Marvel decided they're not going to move in the direction with Taika and they're going to go in a different direction. They haven't picked a director yet, but this interview came after he knew the fact that he wasn't coming on Thor 5. So there's a little bit of saltiness in this comment, right? And I didn't actually, to me, this was the comment that rubbed me the wrong way. When he said, I did some research on it. Doing research is barely getting through one Thor issue. One, what issue was it? Was it an old Silver Age Thor? Which, let's be honest, guys, we're going back and reading Silver Age stuff. It's very dated. It's very hard to get through. Even the major titles like Fantastic Four, Hulk, Spider-Man, just a different time era. Like, what issue did you pick up? What you should have picked up and read was the whole Jason Aaron, Asad Ribic run on a character that you're really working on instead of completely kiboshing him. And this takes me back to Terrificon of 2022 when Matt and I were there. I had a conversation with Asad Ribic, who did the art on that fantastic Jason Aaron run, and he said he absolutely hated the movie. He said it was stupid and too funny and silly. Jason Aaron had a second opinion on it. He kind of backed the movie, but at that point, what can you do? He's seen his baby destroyed in front of his eyes and just took it on the chin. So that being said, guys, you read one comic book, you read one Thor, and then base it off of that. That comment rubbed me the wrong way, Maddie.
Yeah. Like you said, the older Thor stuff, sorry, Gary, it's tough to read. You know, I know that's
Yep.
Gary's guy,
Yep.
but, you know, that is a tough read. But we've done it for research. We've done it to familiarize ourselves with the character, to do spec videos and this and that. And I mean, we're not getting paid what he's getting paid, right? But like Jay said, the Jason Aaron Thor run, it was a great story. A lot of people say that's their favorite modern story. So that was not a tough read. That was actually an easy read because it was good.
Yep.
And it was written a little bit more modernized. So if you're going to use that character to read, I mean, what is that that first arc, Jay? Like 8 or 10 issues with Gore?
Yeah, and it's fantastic. Like, you don't put that down. You go right through, and you
That's like
see,
one night you could get through
yeah,
that.
you get the idea of how revengeful and how diabolical Gore really is, and the reason he is doing what he is doing and obtains the All Black and the Necro Sword and all that. And I mean, if you read that, you're not going to turn Gore into basically a pedophile on back of a school bus, which they did in Love and Thunder, because that's basically who he was, a feeble, weak-looking character, and it was the total opposite in that run. So that's what pissed me off about it, and I knew it was going to be a disaster off the jump. And a lot of his fans were like, "Oh no, give it a chance. Look at Ragnarok," but Ragnarok was a whole different type of movie than this.
Yeah.
For this, if I'm the MCU, if I'm Feige, I'm bringing in a horror-esque type writer or even a drama type writer that's going to make this movie dark. And the thing with that is the MCU has pulled Thor in so many different directions from where we first saw him until now. We've seen a strong Thor. We've seen a beat up and depleted Thor. We saw a Thor that's suffering from PTSD. We saw a fat Thor. Like, where does Thor go from here? It's a
Right.
character that they absolutely destroyed along with the Hulk. It's the same thing, so pulled in so many different directions. Like, where do you go from here?
Looking to clean and press your books before submission? Well, look no further than the best in the business, Erod 212 with Express Comic Book Pressing Service. Defects 10 gets you 10% off. Erod will submit your books to CGC and CBCS and pass along his discount. Hit him up on Instagram or email expresscbp@yahoo.com.
So the last comment he made, which really threw salt on the wound, is when Marvel called him in, he said that he knew that this was bottom of the barrel for Marvel, that they were really scraping at the bottom. And I mean, that's taking a shot at himself and basically the movie, but he did turn the Ragnarok movie around, right? He got eyes on Thor. It was the best Thor movie that had come out, followed by one and then two. Um, but there you go, guys. It's the MCU just not giving a shit, in my opinion. And if I'm a head executive at the MCU, I'm bringing in a director. He's getting a thorough interview. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Tell me what you know about Thor. Tell me your favorite storyline. Tell me what you're gonna do with this character and that character. And it just seemed they gave him the keys and were like, here, run with it, and let's just hope for the best.
Yeah, and it worked. Like we said earlier, it worked out in three, not so much in four. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm going to take it a little further beyond, take it beyond this. I mean, going back to Waititi, he had some other comments before the movie came out, right after it came out, basically saying like Marvel fans aren't going to like my movie. Latest comment was his Star Wars movie, which I don't know if it's happening. I heard it wasn't, but then late recently he said Star Wars fans aren't going to like my Star Wars movie. It's like, why are you doing it then? Right? Are you doing it? I don't get it. You know, right? Exactly, and that's the
He said
problem.
clearly why he was doing it, because
Yeah,
he had his second kid and he was poor. To top it all off, fans still defended this movie, right? Maybe movie fans, not as much as people that actually read comics, and to each his own. But even Chris Helmworth told GQ magazine that the crew had too much fun on this movie and it became so silly. And I mean, that's him throwing the movie under the bus. And like Matt said, he doesn't want to throw his guys under the bus, and that's kind of like, hey, I know we fucked up.
yeah.
Here it is.
I read that interview with Hemsworth, and he definitely had the tone of not going to take shots at my guy, but we knew that it wasn't what it should have been. And I think that's why they're teasing a five to not leave. I'm sure he doesn't want to leave his legacy because it is. It's a legacy. I mean, this is his career. Like his, I mean, this is a major, major character that you're gonna remember. You know, especially comic book fans and movie. And do you want to leave on Thor 4, or do you want to leave on a better note in another movie without Watiti? Um, so we'll see. But you know, Kevin Feige's been starting to make some claims about that there wasn't enough supervision on these movies that were being developed during COVID. Bob Iger has come out and said that we have now realized that messaging is not as important as making money for the shareholders of Disney because it is a publicly traded company. The executives, the guys, they're realizing that the last few years of the MCU has been kind of a mistake, or at least not what it should have been. All right. You can have your opinion, everybody's entitled to it. But I think most people realize that they've made a lot of mistakes in phase 4 and 5, especially in phase 4. And which is why in 2024, as of right now, we're only getting one movie, and that's
Yep.
Deadpool. And that's because that thing's been written the shit out of. And I think that'll be great. And I think people will love that. And they know they have to do a lot of rewrites and a lot of rethinking. A lot of stuff's probably going to go on the shelf, especially after a bomb like the Marvels. So, I mean, we could do a video on the MCU going forward, but I think this plays into that narrative that things are changing. We've known they've wanted to change. You guys know, excuse me, you guys have known that things were that needed to change, and now the executives are finally starting to say publicly that things are changing, and now their actions are also mimicking their words. So I think that's what you got going on here.
Yeah, and not only that, now you got Gunn over at the DCU with Feige on a hot seat, and we're gonna see what he's gonna do because, like you said, Marvel got one movie coming out in 2024. DCU is up and coming. If Gunn blows it out of the water, which he may or may not do, right? I have faith in the guy, but that's gonna put Marvel in a weird situation on how they're gonna move forward and if they're gonna start rewriting and hitting their roots, or are they just going to keep taking the direction they've been taking and not listening to comic book fans and people in the comic book industry? Defects, hope you enjoyed the first Butcher's Block. Just like Ronnie McFadden did, if you have any issues or anything going on in comics, movies, community that you want to talk about or want us to discuss, hit us up in the comments. Let us know on IG. Make sure you give us a follow. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. You know where to find us every Tuesday and Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Until the next time, Defects, we'll check you.